commander of STS-51L, Commander Dick Scobie, who will introduce the rest of his crew, and he'll say a few words.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our fans over there in the corner. As usual, it's a real pleasure to be at the Cape, to come down here and participate in something that the Cape does better than anybody in the world, and that's launching space vehicles. It's a great pleasure for us to be here. We expect weather like this on Sunday when we launch, and y'all do the best to keep it that way if you would. And what I'll do is introduce the next crew member, and we'll just go down the line, let everybody say a little bit as we go. And I'd like to introduce my pilot, Mike Smith, who's one of the best flyers in the world, and he's great to have in the shuttle, and I'm glad to have him aboard as a pilot. So here's Mike.
Thanks, Dick. Let me echo what Dick said about it's good to be down here and to be flying a vehicle that we know a lot of folks down here have worked very hard on. We understand it's ready to go, and we're looking forward to going to fly. I'm one of the 3 people on board who's and it'll be my first time to fly. Krista McAuliffe and Greg Jarvis it'll also be their first time, and we're just all looking forward to getting on orbit and getting the secret handshake. I'd like to introduce now Judy Resnick. She's our center seater, and keeps Dick and I honest on the system problems. Judy?
Well, I too am glad to be here one more time, and I am hoping that the affliction that Steve Hawley had from the 41D mission specialist of the delays hasn't rubbed off on me, and I think the guys behind me are hoping that it hasn't also. Otherwise, they might throw me off the flight. And I will now introduce Ella Nizuka.
Let me say that it's really a pleasure to be back. I'm looking forward to going to fly this one. I think we got some real interesting payloads. The mission is a great mission. We're looking forward to it, and I think we're ready to go fly. Thanks for being out here today. I forgot the one thing I was supposed to do. Let me introduce Ron McNair, who is going to be doing a lot of work with the Spartan Halley mission and carrying on a lot of the experiments that will be going on in the crew compartment.
Again, I'd like to echo the opinions of my crew members that we look forward to launching from the Cape, first of all, and returning here a few days later. I had the privilege of being a part of the crew a couple of years ago that made the first landing here at the Cape, and I intend to be a part of the crew to make the first return landing to the Cape in about a week. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to perhaps the person you came to see, and that's Krista McAuliffe, our payload specialist, teacher in space.
Well, I am so excited to be here. We watched Columbia go over the Houston area this morning, and that was a thrill. I don't think any teacher has ever been more ready to have 2 lessons in my life. I've been preparing these since September, and I just hope everybody tunes in on day 4 now to watch the teacher teaching from space. I'd like to introduce to you someone who's going to be in my 2nd lesson, Greg Jarvis, the payload specialist from Hughes.
It's a great pleasure finally to get this far. I'm very proud to be part of the program that NASA and Hughes have put together, and I'm glad to be representing the Hughes Aircraft Company as their payload specialist. Without any further ado, I'll get off the stage so you can all get going. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, y'all.
Consists of 3 major components: the orbiter, 2 solid rocket boosters, and the external fuel tank. The 2 solid rocket boosters arrive by railroad car in segments. They are assembled on the mobile launcher platform inside the vehicle assembly building. The 149-foot-tall solid rocket boosters provide the majority of the thrust at liftoff. The external fuel tank arrives by barge at Kennedy Space Center. This 15-story tank provides over 1/2 million gallons of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen to the orbiter's main engines and is the only expendable shuttle component. After arrival, the external tank is taken to a high bay inside the vehicle assembly building and attached to the solid rocket boosters. The remaining space shuttle component is, of course, the orbiter. We have a fleet of 4 reusable orbiters: Columbia, Challenger, Discovery, and Atlantis. The orbiter spaceship is 122 feet in length and has a wingspan of 78 feet, about the size of a small jet passenger plane. Orbiters land at Kennedy Space Center on a 15,000-foot runway designed specifically for them. Upon arrival, the orbiter is towed to its sophisticated aircraft hangar, the orbiter processing facility, where cargo loading, equipment modifications, and minor repairs are performed. After processing, the orbiter is towed into the vehicle assembly building, where a 250-ton crane lifts it into a vertical position. It is then placed into the high bay and mated to the external tank. All systems have passed inspection. The shuttle is carried out to the launch pad on a crawler transporter. There are 2 crawler transporters at Kennedy Space Center. These massive tracked vehicles are the largest of their kind in the world, weighing over 6 million pounds. The crawlers were designed and built in the 1960s for use in the Apollo Saturn V lunar program. Today, more than 20 years later, they are still serving us well. 4 huge hydraulic pistons at each corner of the crawler transporter keep its deck level while climbing the gradual slope leading to the launch pad. Moving at a top speed of 1 mile per hour, it usually takes about 5.5 hours to transport the shuttle from the vehicle assembly building to the launch pad. Approximately 2 weeks of preparation and tests are completed prior to launch. While the flight hardware is being prepared for the mission, the cargo it will carry into space receives a final checkout. Some payloads must be assembled and handled in a vertical position. In the clean room environment of the vertical processing facility, satellites are attached to special pallets and functionally checked with ground support equipment. When checkout is complete, the cargo is loaded into a payload canister in the vertical position and transported to the rotating service structure at the launch pad. The payload is then mounted in a payload changeout room and transferred to the orbiter's cargo bay. The cargo bay allows the shuttle to carry up to 65,000 pounds into space. The interior is 60 feet long by 15 feet in diameter and could easily hold a railroad tank car or a NASA tour bus. Horizontal payloads such as Space Lab are processed in a different facility known as the Operations and Checkout Building. They are then taken to the orbiter processing facility where they are installed in the cargo bay prior to the orbiter's move to the vehicle assembly building. In addition to the large vertical and horizontal payloads, the shuttle carries getaway specials into space. These are self-contained experiment packages belonging to private businesses, schools, or even individuals. They are mounted in the cargo bay while the orbiter is in the orbiter processing facility and are flown on a space-available basis on most shuttle missions.
And then when we're ready to go, we ignite the engines. This is what it looks like.
ISO go. Okay, on launch commit criteria, you go. We'll go. PPS, OTC. PPS, we'll go. HYD, OTC. HYD is go. DVD, OTC. DVD is go. CWS. CWS is go. COFS. COFS is go. AFM. AFM go. GLS. GLS go. CCME. CCME go. MPL. MPL go. PPSS. PPSS go. And CM2C. Thank you.
14, 13, 12, 11, 10. We are go for main engine ignition. 8, 7, 6. We have main engine ignition. 4, 3, 2, 1. Solid motor ignition is done.
You are watching 160 million horsepower at work. At 2 minutes into the flight, 25 miles high and 28 miles downrange, the solid rocket boosters separate from the orbiter and are parachuted into the Atlantic Ocean. Two specially built recovery ships await to retrieve them. The casings and parachutes are recovered and returned to Cape Canaveral Air Force Station for cleaning and refurbishment. The casings are then transported to Utah for reloading with solid propellant for use on another shuttle mission. The external tank remains with the orbiter until separation occurs at 57 miles up and 780 miles downrange. The orbiter continues into space as the tank re-enters the Earth's atmosphere, breaks into several pieces, and falls into the ocean. Two small rocket engines are used to place the shuttle in its final predetermined orbit around the Earth. One of the first critical tasks is to open the payload bay doors. Above the spectacular panorama of Earth, the work begins.
They have two satellites to deploy. The first one is the TDRS satellite. Now, you actually saw a picture of the TDRS satellite in the film that Gene showed us. However, it looked very, very different from this. This is what the TDRS looks like after it has been completely opened up and it is working in space. It is a large communication satellite. In fact, TDRS stands for Tracking Data Relay Satellite. And NASA uses it to track the shuttle, to track other satellites, and also to relay messages between Earth and the satellites and the shuttle. The TDRS is quite large. When this is completely opened up, it measures 40 feet here and 60 feet across here. Now that means it would take about 2 very large classrooms for this to sit in. Secondly, on the third day of the mission, they're going to be launching another satellite. This is called the Spartan Halley. The Spartan Halley sits in the front part of the payload bay. Let's open this up so you can see here. Now, the Spartan Halley here looks quite large compared to this orbiter, but it's just because the model is a little bit small. The Spartan Halley sits in the payload bay up front. The TDRS is sitting towards the back. After the TDRS has been launched, a couple days later, we'll launch the Spartan Halley. It's going to be launched a little bit differently. Judy Resnick, the mission specialist, is going to work the arm inside the shuttle, which will reach over, grab the satellite, and put it out into space. It will orbit on its own for 48 hours, and it's going to be studying Comet Halley and trying to figure out what Comet Halley is made up of. 2 days later, the crew will go back to the Spartan Halley satellite, pick it up, put it back in the payload bay, and bring it back to Earth so the scientists can study the data. Okay, there are several other activities going on board. The crew will be studying how fluids work in space. They're going to be taking pictures out the window of Comet Halley using a special camera. And there are 3 student experiments on board. They are part of NASA's program to encourage student involvement in our space program. One of these experiments will look into how chicken embryos develop in space. Another will look into how crystals form. And the third one is looking into how we can make metal stronger in space.
I just wanted to leave you with a couple of things this year. When I filled out that 15-page application, and a lot of you know that because you probably heard every single solitary piece of information along the way, because I kept everybody right in stride of what was happening. And when I first told people, you know, a lot of kids roll their eyes back and they said, oh, geez, I can't believe she's doing this. And then some people said, no, I think she's going to make it. I think she's going to make it. You had a lot more faith in me than I did at that time. And it was a big chore. It was like doing a big term paper. And I did exactly what I tell you people not to do. I waited to the last minute. You know, I was racing around like crazy. It had to have a February 1st postmark on it. When was it postmarked? February 1st. I dropped it into the mail. But I did it. And I accomplished it with having absolutely no idea that I was going to get this far. And this year is a real special year for you because it's your last year in high school, but it's your beginning for what you're going to be doing in life. And you're going to be looking at all sorts of career opportunities, and you're going to be looking at colleges, and you're going to say, what am I going to do? What do I want to do? Reach for it. You know, push yourself as far as you can, because if I can get this far, you know, you can do it too. And I really hope you have a wonderful year, and I'm going to miss all of you. Thanks a lot.
Walker School, and we have some tape segments from that. So stay tuned for live coverage from Shuttle.
Hi, I'm Carl Watanabe from Diane Jacobson's first and second grade class here at the Walker School, and I'm sitting here getting a chance to talk to some kids. If you had a chance to go up instead of Krista, what would you think would be the neatest thing about going up?
To see this inside space and to land on some planets and to see what the moon's like and pick up a couple moon rocks to study them.
Wow. Well, if you had a chance, what would you think would be neat?
I would like to float up in space. It's real fun, I think.
Uh-huh. Would there be anything that would really worry you?
No.
Good. And this fella here has his own spacesuit here. What would you think would be nice about going up?
Maybe floating around the space shuttle.
And I'm talking with Diane. You say that you've been more or less centering your education for the last 2 or 3 weeks around this space program. How long do you think that will continue on afterwards?
Oh, I think for the rest of the year, hope for the rest of our lives, I think we'll be thinking about it. It's touched us so closely.
And is it all the rest of the school pretty much the same way?
Yes, it is. Yeah, everybody is studying it.
Can I ask one more person? What would you like? What do you think is neat about going up?
To see the planets.
Anything else?
And to float around.
Okay. Well, Krista McAuliffe was going to be floating around a little while, and we're all going to be watching her. And from the Walker School, I'm Carl Watanabe for Channel 12. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what do you think about all this idea of ordinary people in space? Do you think that's a good idea in general?
Well, I think judging from the national media coverage that has come, that people must think it's a good idea, Carl. For my money, of course, we have now, as a city, found ourselves a hero who is the personification that a hero should have.
So all in all, do you find a lot of positive things about this besides the hoopla?
I find a lot of positive things. I think the most discouraging thing is the number of delays that have kind of stood us on our ear each time and will require us to stand on our ear one more time.
Well, she's been handling it pretty well, too. Of course, the city must be disappointed. Do you find anything else negative at all about it, the whole thing?
Well, I think it's been a trying experience for us as a school and for a lot of our students. The amount of disruptions and uncertainties have certainly played a part in in the lives of our students. And I know that a segment, at least, of our student body is getting upset with an overexposure, if you will, almost as though they're being manipulated.
Do you think that this has irreparably had some kind of effect on Concord schools?
Oh, I doubt, no, not irreparable for sure. Temporary. I don't think it's stopped either, Carl. And I fully envision that until Krista returns and has taught here for some time, that the same kind of intrusion will be a pretty regular thing.
Okay, well, after teachers, who next?
I understand a news person is going. Literally, I think that's the next plan, is to send a representative from the media.
So what do you think about the idea of artists, blue-collar workers?
Well, I guess I'm in favor of it, but I also see it as a very clever, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, attempt by NASA to broadcast and increase the base of interest in the space program.
Well, with the Graham-Rudman cuts coming up, everyone is fighting for the dollar. Do you think this makes the space program, in your eyes, look like it's something that should maintain its budget or decrease it or increase it?
Well, Graham-Rudman holds the constitutional test and Congress's determination to break it, that NASA ought to take its cuts along with everybody else.
Okay. What, has there been any surprises in all this?
No, I don't think it's been the surprise was that Krista was selected, and that's a delightful surprise.
Okay.
It's not a surprise to some of us who know her, but when you consider she's one of 11,000 applicants from Concord, New Hampshire, that's a surprise.
Michael, thank you very much.
Carl.
Mike Garrett. Thank you.
Assembly building via the crawlerway. There have been 5 manned launches from Pad B, including Apollo 10 on a Saturn V, 3 launches of Skylab crews using the Saturn 1B rocket, and we're joining the crew 51L for their breakfast, the traditional breakfast. Ellison Onizuka, as you see on the screen, sitting beside Judy Resnick, both mission specialists on board this mission. And we have pilot Mike Smith sitting alongside Commander Dick Scobie, sitting in front of the traditional cake with the emblem, and mission specialist Ron McNair. And to his left, Greg Jarvis, he was payload specialist, sitting beside Krista McAuliffe, the teacher in space participant for this mission. All of them getting ready to have a bite to eat before they begin donning their spacesuits and getting ready for their walk out to the astronaut van, which will bring them out to the pad. Once again, the mission crew of Mission 51L, obviously looking as though they're having a good time. And we see that there's a sign out there. Somebody's holding a sign, "Have a great flight, Grego," the sign says. Apparently meant for payload specialist Greg Jarvis. Awaiting the elevator to arrive on the first level with the flight crew. And here we are, Commander Dick Scobie, followed by Mission Specialist Judy Resnick, Ron McNair, Payload Specialist Greg Jarvis, Mission Specialist Ellison Onizuka, and Krista McAuliffe, giving a big wave to all the members of the media. And she's followed by... you can hear the press calling out to them as they step into the astronaut van that will take them out to the launch pad. The weather here at Kennedy Space Center is chilly for a January morning. Temperature is about 40 degrees with a brisk wind, which makes the air seem a whole lot chillier than it actually is. And it'll take a few minutes for the crew to get to the pad from the O&C building, at which time they will be given the go to ingress the White Room and don their flight helmets before they get into the cockpit and begin hooking up their communications and emergency oxygen tie-ups. At T-minus 2 hours.
Once the Astrovan gets past the roadblocks, it will proceed to the pad surface where the astronauts will get out and take the elevator to the 195-foot level of the fixed service structure. Right now they are going past the vehicle assembly building and will be pausing momentarily to allow the head of the astronaut office, John Young, to get out, and the flight director from JSC, George Abbey, to also get out to come into the Launch Control Center. Out on the pad, the closeout crew is making final preparation for the crew arrival. Switches in the cockpit have been positioned by astronaut Sonny Billy Bob Carter to prevent any inadvertent firing of the forward and aft reaction control system while the crew is climbing into the vehicle. Switches have also been configured to the proper settings to prepare the vehicle's electricity-producing fuel cells for taking on onboard cryogenic reactants when ground supplies are terminated about 3.5 minutes before liftoff. The orbiter's navigational aids, the tactical air navigation and radar altimeters have also been activated, and they have reported back to the firing room that they are in the proper configuration. Out at the shuttle landing strip, astronaut John Young will first have a briefing, and then he'll prepare to make weather flights to determine what the visibility is here in the case of a return to launch site abort. However, with the sun coming up, the skies are looking very good here at the Kennedy Space Center. Actually, weather around the world is quite good for this morning's launch, with the exception of some winds at about the 12,000 foot level here at the Kennedy Space Center, which place loads on the orbiter which are out of tolerance. The launch team has been taking a look at those constraints through the morning and have ordered up some additional weather balloons if needed, which would be launched about 45 minutes prior to the intended T0, and then again about an hour and a half after the intended T0 if that should be necessary. As it is, though, all preparations on the pad and with the orbiter are moving along very well. The countdown clock at T-minus 2 hours, 15 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. This is Shuttle Launch Control. This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 1 hour, 42 minutes and counting. Mission Specialist Judy Resnick now in the orbiter and about to start her communications checks, while Teacher Payload Specialist Krista McAuliffe has put on her egress harness, and that's being adjusted now, and will be just about to put on her launch and entry helmet. Krista McAuliffe has put on her Snoopy hat, so-called because it looks a little bit like the World War I aviator's hat that the Peanuts character Snoopy wears. She's putting on her launch and entry helmet. One of the things that sometimes is a little problem, it has to seal carefully, and hair has to be positioned properly so that can occur. Mission Control in Houston saying good morning to Judy Resnick.
LTD MS2 radio check. MS2, this is LTD on Ground 1. Great, loud and clear. Good morning. Good morning.
One of the only problems that have been detected so far in the ground support equipment has been a liquid oxygen replenish valve, which apparently is leaking just slightly. That valve will be torqued down by a special red crew if necessary, and if we go into a longer hold. We have on hand in case they were needed during the ingress of the crew. This includes things like flashlights, screwdriver, Allen head tool, the ASP checklist, spare headsets, pocket knives, pliers, jeweler's screwdrivers, anything that would be needed to take care of a problem. The door now closed and being secured, and then the insulating plugs will be put in. So here at the Kennedy Space Center, the countdown continuing, and hope building that we will be able to launch at 9:37, which is the beginning of our 3-hour launch window for this morning.
Houston, CDR PLT.
We had contingency balloons available to fly if necessary. Those are standing by, but it appears now that they will not be needed.
Challenger Houston, CDR, I've got you loud and clear.
At the shuttle landing facility 4 miles west of the pad, the landing support convoy is now being positioned. That convoy would support the shuttle orbiter if it had to return to the Kennedy Space Center for any reason. The convoy is made up of a number of vehicles, including a purge truck which flows conditioned air through the vehicle, a cooling vehicle, and a special mobile white room. The liftoff time just about an hour and a half away, although the countdown is at T-minus 1 hour and 10 minutes. There are 2 more 10-minute built-in holds in the count, one at the T-minus 20-minute point and one at the T-minus 9-minute point. So the countdown going satisfactorily at T-minus 1 hour, 10 minutes, 25 seconds and counting. This is Shuttle Launch Control. Examined and verified to be the proper ones, and all aero surfaces and actuators that will steer the vehicle through powered flight are in the proper configuration for applying hydraulic pressure. T-minus 9 minutes and holding. This is normally a 10-minute build-in hold. However, we will probably be holding longer while they complete the tasks in the white room in removal of the handle on the hatch to Challenger. There is additional tools on its way to the pad. We have just had a announcement from Launch Director Gene Thomas to the crew and to the launch team that we are going to scrub for today, and that the people will be coming out to the pad to let the crew out of the orbiter shortly as we recycle the vehicle back to a safe condition. The initial recycle will be back to T-minus 20.
Okay, thank you, Hugh. Well, of course, it was just not our day and particularly disappointing because we had an exceptionally smooth tanking, the external tank from our newly rejuvenated facility. A few minor problems with the facility systems, but really went smooth right through the crew ingress up until the time we closed the hatch in the crew module. And at that time we had two problems. When we initially closed the hatch, we have a measurement we take externally that is essentially an electrical confirmation that all the latches are in place inside of the hatch, and one of the measurements said they were all closed and the other one did not. So we ran through a series of cycles and put one of the technicians in the crew module to confirm that we had a good structural hatch lock and it was just a problem with the position indicator. That put us a little bit behind for the next event, which was removing the ground support assist handle for the crew module hatch, which is what we use to handle it for opening and closing when we're not doing the normal flight crew egress. And that handle could not be removed because the threaded fastener, which is part of the flight structure on the hatch, apparently was stripped, and the technicians had to get a drill and drill out the head of the nut and the bolt in order to get the ground support equipment handle removed. And that process took about an hour, and at that point in time we were into the window 45 minutes to an hour, and the crosswinds got us. We had been talking about the weather all morning, and we had a little bit of problem with the frost and the ice on the external tank, but the temperatures improved enough for that not to become a factor. We had talked about the winds aloft behind this front that just came through. We had an exceptionally high jet stream in the lower levels, and we were very close to the load specifications on the orbiter in the lower 20,000 feet. But the final set of readings we got at L-2 hours confirmed that we were in a go condition there. So we put that one behind us. We did get some cloud cover in, as you noticed, at about 4,000 feet right around launch time. And we were in and out on that for about a half an hour until we finally got into a good break in that weather, which looked like it was going to hold. And then the winds picked up, and at approximately 10:15 Eastern Time, we were really getting into a condition of no-go from the standpoint of RTLS crosswinds at our landing facility. The limit on that is 15 knots direct crosswind. And at that point in time and for the rest of the morning, we were out of limits with that, in fact getting up to as high as gusts to 28 and 30 knots when we finally scrubbed for that condition. So our plan is to recycle and go for tomorrow morning. Window opens at 9:37 Eastern. We've got a lot of work to do because we delayed the process this morning and early into this afternoon to use up most of the window waiting on the winds. But we think we can finish it. Major concern other than the work is I'm corrected, it's 9:38 tomorrow morning. The major concern, other than getting the recycle completed in the time available, is the temperature. The weather forecast calls for us going below freezing at approximately midnight, dropping 1 degree to 2 degrees an hour until around sunrise, and they're looking for a low temperature somewhere in the low 20s. And then gradually increasing after daybreak, but not getting above freezing until tomorrow afternoon early. So this is going to be concern from the standpoint of our facility systems, particularly the water systems, some of which we will drain, and others we will essentially set up a bleed flow through some ports that have been put in there strictly for that purpose, and we'll collect the runoff of that and drain it away from the vehicle and hopefully keep those lines free. The other, of course, is our normal purges and environmental control systems. It's going to be taxing their limits just to take care of these temperature conditions, and of course we add on to that the cryo temperatures that we get during tanking, which should begin about 1 in the morning, and it's going to be close to see if they'll perform like we hope they will. But that's the plan, and we plan to press on with that, even given that we're looking at low temperatures in the morning.
Okay, thank you, Bob. We're ready for some questions. Give your name and affiliation if I don't.
I think some of the kids and some of the teachers are getting fed up with it. There've been some, I'm sure they regret it now. A few people were kind of rude to the media, but it's hard for us. We've never had to deal with it like this. I mean, this is incredible for us. But now everyone's getting used to it, and if you don't want to talk to someone, you don't talk to them. So, I mean, now that we have a famous teacher, we have to get used to the idea.
I know it's real disappointing that the liftoff didn't happen right now, but in general, the spirits really haven't changed around here, right?
Well, I think everyone's mellowed out a little today now that it's definitely off. But for tomorrow, hopefully everyone's going to be up for it like they were this morning, or even more so.
Charlie, with all the hoopla and all the media here, what steps have you taken to try and, especially on a regular school day, what steps have you tried to take to make things work just smoothly as you could, still give everybody a chance to see the liftoff?
Well, we tried to provide as many viewing opportunities as possible. We had a number of people, teachers and students, bring in TV sets that we distributed strategically throughout the building, and we used the dozen or so school sets in places like the cafeteria, the auditorium, the media center. And so we had pretty good number of places that, and I don't think any student was denied the opportunity to be able to see the potential liftoff, the aborted liftoff. So it went pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Did you get together with your faculty and have some sort of any meetings, or did you decide to let things go business as usual as much as possible?
Oh, we've been planning for this week for quite a while. My only disappointment was that at no time until yesterday did they ever plan to have liftoff during the school day. So we got caught short on that. The plans that we put into effect today are basically the plans that we're putting into effect for the space lessons, and we just used those same plans for today, and they worked out pretty well. So it was a dress rehearsal in a sense. Worked out very well. We'll have more TV sets, we think, tomorrow, maybe another 10 to 15 sets. And if we do, then we don't have any concerns about crowding in any particular area as we did today.
So you think the media impact in general is being handled. Do you think of it, are there any negative aspects at all that you wish weren't happening?
Well, an enormous amount of my time and some of my assistants has been co-opted by media, having to attend to the media needs. And yeah, it has taken away from running a school. It's more hours in during the day, and a lot of worries and concerns sometimes, but by and large it's gone very well, and I don't think that we would trade it for anything. That is the whole event of Krista going up into space and teaching lessons and coming back. We wouldn't want to wish it on any other high school because we want it to be right here.
Well, my question I ask everybody else, now with a teacher in space, have you any ideas of who should be next?
Well, I was thinking that perhaps a principal should go into space. The only thing is, if they ever did come up with a program like that, I suppose that I would, the probability of my having a chance would be zero, because they would obviously move it somewhere else. But I haven't really given it any thought. I guess it would be nice if they got other kinds of people in our society to go up. Maybe a clergyman would be a good idea to go up, or a banker. Who knows? Maybe even a gambler or somebody or other. Maybe well, they're going to send up a journalist, an artist, maybe a housewife, plain old housewife. Oh, I better be careful about it. Plain young housewife. Because let's face it, probably one of the most important professions that there is in this country is being a housewife, and maybe they ought to highlight that.
Do you see a swing towards more careers in space? Do you also see that this is helping generate more interest in the teaching profession?
Well, I think it might generate some more interest in the teaching profession. I certainly would hope that would be an outcome of all of this. I also like to think, too, that that would make people more aware of the activities that are going on in terms of developing our potential for living in space. I really don't believe that that's too far off. If you ever listen or read what Carl Sagan has to write about space, it's really not too far down the road when perhaps those who would be left here on this planet Earth might be looking for another place to live in because you know, it might not be suitable here anymore. But just in the immediate future, I think that it's been a good thing for everybody to get a better idea as to what the NASA is all about.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that with the upcoming Graham-Rudman budget cuts and things like that, that this, in your own opinion, has helped with the idea of not cutting NASA's budget or increasing it or anything like that?
Well, I suppose NASA is in business right now to go commercial in a sense, that doing business with places like West Germany and France and Britain and sending up satellites for them, Mexico, that I suppose the payloads might generate enough funds to make up the difference in the federal funding that NASA gets. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe that's the direction that it should go for. I'm not worried so much about funds being cut for NASA as I am about funds being cut for education, which I think is disastrous.
Well, this may help.
Well, it may, although sometimes there doesn't appear to be any domino effect on the amount of monies that schools get via the federal programs that are available to us. When something else is cut, it always seems that education is among the top priorities for cutting down in Washington.
Has this whole liftoff cost the Concord High School that much money?
Oh, I don't think so. Maybe some phone calls. I've made a number of phone calls. I suppose that it would have been nice if you folks in the media had picked those up. You know, I don't know. No, it hasn't been that bad at all. I wouldn't think that it was expensive at all.
So in general, you're taking it one day at a time, but well in stride with what you have facilities for.
Carl, it's a good way to put it. One day at a time, and to utilize the organizational mechanism that we already have in place. And with the cooperation of the kids here in the school and the teachers, it's a pretty simple thing in a way.
Go ahead, LPS. Go ahead, LPS. Go ahead, TLS. TLS functional missile mission is complete. That's step 405. 405, copy.
The countdown clock continuing at T-minus 1 hour, 17 minutes and counting. This is Shuttle Launch Control.
Okay, thanks, Roberta. Okay, we will hold it an hour and 10 minutes prior to picking up IMU operations. Okay, that's fine. And TGNC, copy that. GNC, copy. Okay. OTCO, MPF. Go ahead. Okay, we're in work globes and a half now. Copy that. It's going to be just a little while. We're going to wait until we get out of this hold here. I don't know if you want to leave the... Okay, you want to go ahead? To pressurize that. No. Okay, you want to go ahead and pick up with cabinet redundancy? Yeah, we can work that anytime. Okay. CDR, OTC? CDR. Okay, let's go ahead and perform the cabin vent redundancy check, please. Cabin vent redundancy check complete, OTC. Copy that. ECLE, copy. Stand by. I'm waiting to verify my talkback here. Okay, I can verify that now. Okay. OTC, CPVD. CPVD. Yeah, I'm back on 212. You only pick up with 594 this time? Yeah, I think we can go ahead and do that. Okay. OTC, CTVD. CTVD. Yeah, 594, 595, and 596 complete. Copy that. OTC, OVC.
Phil King in the 10th box of the first string.